All right, Akim, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakat Kadash, that honors the apostles and elders of the millstone, teaching us his truth. Citations to the sincere Akim and Aquath that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai, back in here with another quick lesson, and Lord's will as always, Yahweh Rataza, Yahweh willing, and this lesson may be edifying. Today's lesson, I title it Ungodly Children, and I'm kind of more speaking to a lot of the youngsters, the young people of our nation, right? So here in the city of Toronto, there was a recent homicide, so I just kind of wanted to do a lesson a little bit on that. And here's the quick clip, article. Young Jake, so it says here, he didn't deserve to die, somebody said like that. 15-year-old boy fatally gunned down, steps from the police station. It says he was supposed to start, so it says Mario Giddings was supposed to start grade 11 at Weston Collegiate Institute on Tuesday morning. Instead, those who knew and loved him are mourning his death. All right, so essentially now you have a youngster here, he's supposed to start school, and the Lord took him, right? So it says 15-year-old boy was fatally shot Monday evening in the parking lot of a plaza across the street from the 12th Division Police Station near Black Creek, and Chathaway Drives. Right, so I'm just going to read a little bit of the article. I kind of want to get more into the scriptures, to be honest. Excuse me. And it says, Giddens said Mario had told her that he was afraid to go to school because he had been in a fight, was fearful that he'd be found. He was afraid to go there because I think he had a fight with a few of them, she said. And then he told me that I had to look for another place for him to go to school because those boys will come back to me. Right, so it says at the scene, officers Mario suffering from a gunshot wound, performed life-saving measures. Deputy Inspector Dan Pravica told reporters at the scene on Monday night. The teen was taken to the hospital via emergency run, but was pronounced dead a short time later on, right? So, here you have, another example of essentially, our people being gunned down, kind of like just essentially what's happening, they're just dropping like fruit flies. Right, and I mean that in a very, very facetious way. So and all of this is really the curses, and and the mom's lamenting now. He was a good boy and this and that. Like, we don't know what he did, right? The scriptures talk about the eyes of the Most High are like 10,000 times brighter than the sun. So there could have been a lot of things that he could have done, right? So as a matter of fact, let me start off with this. Salakia. As a matter of fact, let me just start here. Okay, this is Deuteronomy 28, verse 54, and it says, so that the man that is tender and delicate among you, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil towards his brother, and towards the wife of his bosom, and towards the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. Right? So you have, a situation where one of the curses that was placed upon our people was the fact that, we would have essentially a disgust, an evil eye towards our own kin, towards our own brethren, towards was our own, us of the same genus, of the same bloodline, right? So this is why one of the reasons you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you cannot, you can't get along, you can't see eye to eye, because the Lord put that curse upon us because we began to hearken not unto His voice and His program and His ways and His righteousness. Scriptures say that His ways are higher than our ways, right? So this is so we need Yahweh Bashem Yahweh to be able to lead us, direct us, instruct us, because this is what leads to us not hearkening unto the voice of the Lord, right? The water, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh. Okay, this is in regards to a point I made earlier. This is Job chapter 4, verse 7, and it says, "Remember, I pray thee, who is ever perished, being an innocent, or where were the righteous cut off?" Right. So we're living in a time where when people think that, for example, a young child is born, or even maybe a young teenager maybe their lives were cut short for whatever reason. People look at the situation face value in terms of how they look on the outside. Or a 10-year little girl, she died, or for example, this 15-year-old, he passed away, right? People look at the situation essentially face value in terms of how they essentially looked physically. Right, and people might be like, "Oh, this person didn't deserve that. This person didn't deserve this." Like, we don't know what that spirit did in that particular body in their past life, right? And this is something that a lot of our people don't understand. They don't understand. They don't understand reincarnation, and they don't understand that, like it says in Ecclesiastes, that the Most High require which is past. So, all these, judgments that are falling upon these people, they don't understand that the Lord requires these things, right? For example, if a child is born with like a particular disease, they might be wondering, why would the Most High do that? And really and truly, when you really look at the situation, our people just don't understand the Heavenly Father, because they've been super indoctrinated by the ways of this world, by the Catholic Church, or whatever religion they subscribe to, rather than actually subscribing to, the apostles, the prophets, the elders, the teachers, teaching on the highways and byways, right? That's giving you this understanding for free, right? The scriptures talk about, why spend money for which is not bread, and your labor which satisfies not, right? So, you spend money all this time in these churches and, kind of give tithes, and I'm such a good person and this and that and whatnot. You put on your fancy outfits, trying to be seen of men, but yet for all, you're lacking understanding why these things happen in your lives, why these particular situations, occur in your personal walk. People don't have any understanding in regards to any of these things, right? So this is Amos chapter 3, verse 6, and it says, "Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in the city, and the Lord hath not done it?" Right. So this is the Lord at work. The Lord is He controls both sides here, right? He forms the light and creates darkness. He to roughly paraphrase, creates peace and evil. I, the Lord Yahweh, do all these things, right? So the Lord is in control of all these different things, and this is one of the things that He's done, right? But our people, it just goes to show the simplicity. And I mean that in a negative way, the simplicity in our people, because they're Sodom's children, right? So, okay, so kind of going back and leaning and diving in more to the topic in regards to ungodly children, because you see the kind of behavior that leads to this, you see the outcome, that leads to this kind of behavior, this kind of unrighteous behavior, right? Because I was watching the article, I was watching the news, and I didn't see any like, male figures, male like a father figure in this particular boy's life, right? I believe he was being taken care of by his aunt, right? So you see the destruction of what happens to our young men and even our young women as well, right? They're not left out of the equation. But what's important is that they don't have that healthy relationship, you know, with our fathers, with our biological fathers. They don't have that. So when they don't have that, it essentially the strain of the mother's role essentially becomes very strained, right? And you see what happens when they start acting out, right? That's when a father is supposed to essentially kind of issue that sense of order and discipline, so on and so forth, right? To keep the child on track. But we live in a society that seems to bash and seems to disregard the importance of a father and try and even further, to take it even further, they essentially try to reduce the importance of a father in thinking that, a father's role only is to provide financial support, right? So this is the destruction of our families, and this is, you see that being played out via the curses. So let's go to okay, this is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. And it says, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it, right? So the way a child should be brought up is in their statutes, the laws, the commandments, so they know and understand, excuse me, so they know and understand that, oh, I'm an Israelite, and an Israelite's not supposed to do these things. We're not supposed to act this way. We're not supposed to worship these things. You're more mindful of, essentially how to treat yourself and how to treat your brethren, right? How to treat your parents, how to treat your wife or your husband or whoever it is, right? So it is, this is why, when you read in Deuteronomy, when the Israelites were given that command not to take on those customs of all those different ites that you read in Deuteronomy 7, don't get mingled with them. Don't get mingled with the ways of the heathen, right? Because the customs of the heathen are vain, right? And this is what sways our mind or takes our mind away from Yahweh Bashem Shai when we get mingled into these other customs, right? You look at King Solomon, eventually when he got old, his mind was turned away from the Lord, and he began making all these high places for all these different abomination gods, the Ammonite gods or the Hamitic gods and all these that kind of stuff, right? Because his mind was turned away from the Lord, right? So you saw the consequences of that. That's why a proper brainwashing really starts in the mind, right? It's not about simply the having lots of substance and lots of riches, right? And our people like to essentially boast about the importance of the so-called generational wealth and so on and so forth. And I'll use King Solomon again. Look at his situation. He built the house of the Lord, right? And now essentially he transgressed, and then now the kingdom got divided into two. You had the northern and you had the southern kingdom, right? So essentially it starts being taken after somebody who was not being as obedient and following the ways of Yahweh Bashem El Shai, right? So let's continue. And I wanted to just bring out a couple of examples as well, because this is a common sentiment amongst our people. And this is the funny thing I was just thinking about as well. With all these children, they grow up, and you have situations like this. I remember years ago, before I was in the truth, there was a situation with this guy named George Floyd, right? And so you brothers probably remember. And during this time, that year, I believe it was 2020, there was huge protests, in regards to this, this man, being saying, or about his interaction essentially with the police officer. Now, you saw, if you remember, you could probably pull up clips online. You saw the reaction of Israel reacting. I'm talking about our nation as a whole, right? You saw their reaction, how they reacted when essentially an Edomite police officer, does something to them, to their own people. But the hypocrisy with our people is that they don't share and have that same anger and that same fuel, that same emotion, that same drive, when one of their own kinsmen do it to their own people, right? That's why, these movements like BLM and I'm just mostly speaking about BLM. That's why these particular movements are nonsense. It's BS, right? It doesn't lead to our people it doesn't lead our people anywhere. It just essentially takes, they get super emotional and super charged and super riled up, and then it leads to absolutely nothing, right? But I just wanted to explain the hypocrisy between, when something happens to us from the enemy versus when we do something to our own selves, because there is a lot more so-called black on black, crime, right? And our people don't flinch when it comes to these situations. They completely ignore these things. Again, that is the curses, yes, but I'm just pointing out to the hypocrisy. They care a lot more when the enemy does something, but when we're doing it to ourselves, it's acceptable, right? But I just wanted to make that quick point. Okay, this is Sirach 16, or Ecclesiasticus 16, verse 1, and it says, desire not to have a multitude of unprofitable children, neither delight in ungodly sons. Though they multiply, rejoice not in them, except the fear of the Lord be with them, right? And that's true. That's what these children need. That's why these children, they need that guidance. They need their fathers, of course, right? But a lot of these children running around here, they're very disrespectful to the parents, they're disrespectful to the elderly. They're essentially they're very, very stubborn. I think in Deuteronomy it also talks about, the consequences of having a stubborn son, that he's a glutton or a drunkard or so, right? So you see the effects of what happens to a lot of these children when they don't have that healthy fear of the Lord, right? If you actually saw a situation like that, when I go to, for example, in Deuteronomy, as a matter of fact, let me go to it. Because I remember I used to watch a show called Game of Thrones. And in the show, there was, I think in one of the first seasons, when one of the youngest sons, he actually had to witness another person being, I think he had got his head chopped off, if I'm not mistaken. So imagine witnessing, that's the point I'm really trying to make. Imagine witnessing that, that would strike a healthy amount of fear in you to like, okay, man, I'm not supposed to do this, Okay, Deuteronomy 21, verse 18, and it says, if a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which he would not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him and will not hearken unto them, and the father and the mother lay hold on him and bring him out to the elders of his city and unto the gate of his place, and they shall say unto the elders of the city, our son is stubborn, and rebellious, and will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And the men of the city shall stone him with stones, and he die. So shall put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. So imagine, witnessing that, everybody coming to, you have the elders in the city, They come up and then they pick up all these big stones and they just throw it at it, right? If our people began seeing and witnessing that kind of behavior, do you imagine the amount of obedience that our children would have? They would actually have some kind of proper conduct, because what is the, having that that level of fear, it creates conduct, it creates good behavior, virtuous behavior, this kind of behavior that these young people are getting into. And this is just one example. There's plethora and even worse examples, right? The kind of behavior that they get into, it's it becomes a shame unto you. It becomes a shame onto, like, if that's your son, for example, it becomes a shame onto your parents, a shame onto your family name, a shame onto your clan, your tribe, and essentially your whole nation, right? Essentially it's bringing dishonor. Let me get an account. Okay, this is Tobit chapter 4, verse 5. So this is Tobit speaking to his son Tobias. And it says, "My son, be mindful of the Lord our power all the days, and let not thy will be set to sin, or to transgress his commandments." Right? So going back into that way that we spoke about in Proverbs, that way is how these children should be brought up, right? That's how you produce, children that you're admirable about. But these children are growing up with all these, they're growing up among the heathen, so they're taking on a lot of their customs and their behaviors and their lewd beast-like nature, right? And because they don't actually have a healthy fear of the Lord, it promotes disorderly conduct, right? Just like you see how this man, this young boy was taken out. So, continuing on, it says, "Do uprightly all thy life long, and follow not the ways of unrighteousness," right? So, his father is essentially, Tobit is giving his son proper guidance in regards to how you should live your life, as you grow older, right? And this is the importance of a righteous father, because Tobit was an example of a righteous father, right? An upright father. He was still being chastised at the same time, but he still had what people seem to forget in this world. He had a sense of virtue. Continuing on, it says, verse 6. If thou deal truly, thy doings shall prosperously succeed to thee and to them that live justly. Give alms of thy substance, and when thou givest alms, let not thy eye be envious. Neither turn thy face from any poor, and the face of the Most High Yahweh shall not be turned away from thee. Right? So this is how you conduct yourself. When you have alms, you give to the poor. Sorts of things. This is virtue. This builds character. Right? These are the things that wow. The Lord's his son is being instructed in the ways of the Lord. Right? And the Lord can have favor upon him because his son is doing these particular things. Right? But imagine, but then you see the flip side of this individual here, seeing your children behave such and such a way, it's like, all right, let's send them back to the upper room, man. Send them back to the spirit world. You don't want a son like that, right? Because who knows what this young boy was doing, right? It becomes a shame. Really think of it, 2/3 of our people are a shame unto our nation. Right, the way they behave, and they're just using that one boy as an example, because they don't know how to conduct themselves, right? Because when you brothers and few sisters move about your daily lives, people obviously know something is peculiar about you because of the way you conduct yourselves. Why? because you have a healthy fear of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You don't do particular things. You don't move like niggas. You don't move like wacky tacky hoes. We move in a particular way because this is how the Lord intended us to be, right? So, and people will come up to you sometimes and will tell you, because like the scriptures say, wisdom maketh a man's face to shine, right? So, all right. Verse 8, and it says, if thou hast abundance, give alms accordingly. If thou have but a little, be not afraid to give according to that little. For thou layest up a good treasure for all thyself against the day of necessity. Because alms do deliver from death, and suffereth not to come into darkness. For alms is a good gift unto all that give it in the sight of the Most High Yahweh. Right? So, he's just going and kind of expounding on the benefits of giving alms, right? You lay up treasure in heaven, essentially, like scriptures talk about, lay up your treasure where, thieves and, can't come in and break it through and steal, so on and so forth, roughly paraphrase, right? Because, we want the Lord to remember us, in days of necessity, right? Because, Jacob's trouble, MOTB, going to be cut off from, society and stuff like that and all this kind of stuff. We want the Lord to remember us, in those times, right? I guess I'll read verse 12, and I'll just end it off there. It says, beware of all whoredom, my son, and chiefly take a wife of the seed of thy fathers, and not a strange woman to wife, which is not of thy father's tribe. For we are the children of the prophets, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember, my son, that our fathers from the beginning, even that they all married wives of their own kindred, and were blessed in their children, and their seed shall inherit the land. Right. So, the son, this is just more admonishment of how a father should be able to groom and properly keep his son. Because having that healthy fear of the Lord promotes and produces virtue. It produces righteousness. It produces wisdom. It produces a plant well cultivated. This young individual here, this Mario Giddings character, he is a plant that is uncultivated, right? So you can be cultivated in the ways of wickedness, or you can be cultivated in the ways of righteousness, right? So, anyways, I guess I'll leave it there. I kind of rambled on quite long enough. But, I sincerely pray and hope that, this lesson was, at least a little bit edifying. And I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Until next time, I say Shalom.